Hi guys, it's Katla. Welcome to my 4th episode. As you can see from the change in set, I am going to be doing something a bit different today. I wasn't really planning on filming an episode today. However, I came across an article that relates to my work with food banks, and as I've been working in food banks since July 2020, I have some level of acquired knowledge along with plenty of personal research and reading I've been doing, as I am passionate about addressing food insecurity and reducing malnutrition across populations. So I figured it'd be interesting to read through the article and do a bit of commentary on it. So for a bit of background on myself, in addition to being a student right now, I work at a food bank. As you'll see in this article, maybe I'll have it in the title. I'm not a religious person. I am an atheist. I was raised in the typical conservative Christianity that is very, very common in the US, but I don't believe that anymore. So it is extremely frustrating to see when religious abuses are taken against a federal aid program and against people who genuinely need food. So it's just kind of upsetting to see this news article. So the website that I got this article from is called The Counter. It is a nonpartisan, nonprofit news source that focuses on the politics and economics behind food. Basically, it is very much like agriculture industry and discussing like factory farms and food processing plants. And then also, especially with the pandemic, how food aid is being distributed, as you'll see in this article. Okay, so as I do my commentary, I'm not going to be reading the entire article. I'm going to be skipping through and reading sections. However, the article will be linked in the description below if you would like to read it all for yourself, which I recommend you do. A lot of the parts I'll be skipping are background information that will be of interest to those who are not familiar with food banks. An Oklahoma man made people attend a ghost story, read sermon, before getting USDA food boxes. Then he let them take up to 30 at a time. Title of article is a bit sensationalized. The sermon part is very disturbing because while it was advertised as a ghost story, it also included group prayer and religious messages. So it is accurate to call it a sermon. The 30 boxes taken at a time thing is frustrating because he most likely wasn't doing it right. However, food banks will have delivery programs, so a single person may take up to 30 boxes, but there is a registry, so it is known that they're definitely delivering them to 30 different families. As with this program, it's supposed to be 1 box per family per week. Just a little background on this program. It is like this program is also something my food bank participates in. As a side note, I will use food bank and food pantry interchangeably. There are specific definitions, but I work in both. Beginning in January, Hardison asked that all would-be recipients first attend an event in the days prior to picking up aid. Going to stop right there. We are in a pandemic. Please stay home as much as possible. Oh my God. Where they got tickets that guaranteed a certain number of food boxes. With my food bank, we check people's IDs or like proof of address, and it doesn't even have to be like in county or like in city. The federal USDA guidelines say that it should be 1 box per household. So we have to make sure like we have like unique addresses for each box we give out. You could do that on the same day. You don't need to do it on a separate day. After the tickets were distributed, Hardison presented a religious sermon featuring a 15-minute ghost story, perhaps a reference to the Holy Ghost, and led a group prayer. The group prayer is the bigger issue for me. It's also just having a religious event in connection to federal food aid is a flagrant violation of church and state, and it's not good. In a phone call, Hardison said that this process allowed him to estimate how many boxes the community would need before handing them out. Again, there are other ways. If he couldn't do a week-by-week supply chain management where it's like, okay, I got this many this week, that means we need this many next week, and like basically, oh, we're over, let's readjust, and helped ensure that no one would leave empty-handed. So yes, it does suck when we have to turn away people empty-handed because we run out of food. However, a responsible food distributor for a food bank or food pantry would have contacts with similar organizations in the area to direct people there if we run out of food. But this isn't standard practice when it comes to food box distribution. For recipients, it meant they had to make 2 trips to get food boxes, one to obtain a ticket, another for food. Yeah, I basically just said this before the article said it. Yeah, you can register the people on the same day. You can use basic supply chain management to figure out how many boxes you need. You can partner with other organizations to direct people to if you run out of food. And yeah, it's the whole forcing people to take 2 trips to get food. We're in a pandemic, should be staying home as much as possible. I know I've already said that. I am going to repeat myself because we are not out of this pandemic yet. And also, these people still may be working. They may have a limited schedule. They may have a reduced schedule. Whatever reason why they need food assistance, they still might have to go to work. They still might have a busy schedule. They can't just go out to get for multiple days when this setup should be only a single day. However, members of the community say they still view this policy as discriminatory. It's a government-based program, it shouldn't be faith-based, said Bridget Sisley Smith, a resident of Delaware County. She sent multiple letters of complaint to USDA, which were reviewed by the counter. Exactly, there shouldn't be any, it shouldn't even be mistaken to be connected between religion and faith. It is the burden of the food distributor, the food pantry, the food bank, whatever, to ensure that there is no interconnection. It can occur at a church, but you can't be having it as part of services. It has to be separated. Sisley Smith is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, and for her, Hardison's proselytizing echoes the colonial violence that her ancestors experienced. It does. So a course I took recently for my own self-enrichment was on the history of California. And part of this was going through the colonial era, pre-statehood, pre-Anglo colonization when this land was being colonized by the Spanish, and it discussed a lot of the abuses done by Spanish soldiers, how this put Native peoples in dire, horrific situations. And to get out of these situations, the Native people were encouraged, pressured. Encouraged is a very positive word to say in this situation, but they were basically forced into moving into the mission systems, converting to Catholicism, and enduring a lot of abuse. So this isn't a new thing to find people in dire situations and force them into religion. It's just something as old as time. She also believes his events contradicted COVID-19 public health guidelines. Hundreds of people gathered together in one place to listen to a sermon is not a safe thing, whether it's outside or not. Exactly. So one thing that we discuss in risk prevention is called the Swiss cheese model. I mentioned it in one of my previous episodes. It is about how one layer protects the holes of the previous layer. Nothing is 100%. However, as we layer things on, we become more and more protected. That's why, so when we're talking about COVID-19, we want you to wear masks. Then we want you to be outside if you're going to gather with people. We want you to gather in small groups. We want you to be socially distanced. We want you to make sure you're healthy, you're not showing symptoms or fever. We want you to, want you to use hand sanitizer and wash your hands. Nothing is perfect. However, you want to have every single layer. You want people to gather in small groups. You want people to gather as infrequently as possible. So requiring people to gather in large groups, even if social distancing was occurring, even if it was outside, you're having hundreds of people gather in an arguably unnecessary meeting, you are increasing the risk. Also, the fact is, if you are of lower socioeconomic status, as in you are someone who's receiving food aid, you are at higher risk of poor health outcomes. Socioeconomic status is something we discuss a lot in public health, and trying to find the best way to take care of people. And the whole thing is, we know that if you are of lower socioeconomic status, your lifespan is shorter, your You're more likely to have comorbidities and chronic illness. It's just additional disadvantage after additional disadvantage. So to me, I see this kind of thing as cruelty. It may be thoughtless. Like, if I gave him the benefit of the doubt, like, he may be like, oh, well, I'm helping people, I'm giving them hope, but it's not great. It can directly hurt people. Food pantry operators in the area say that Hardison's distribution process is harmful to families in need. This food pantry operator says that Hardison's distribution process is harmful to not just families in need, but to everyone in this community. Proselytizing at distribution sites, not to mention distributing tickets at a separate sermon, are clear violations of rules banning the commingling of religion and federal aid. Yeah, so to go off on a bit of a tangent, I have loved helping people and volunteering in these ways for years. However, I have not been able to at times because even as a volunteer, I was getting proselytized to. I am now in a much more secure place in my beliefs and my mental health that I am fine with being around religious elements, but this hasn't always been the case for me. So for years I had to limit my ability to volunteer and help people because I couldn't find secular organizations to help with. The organization I work with now is a secular organization on paper, but there are plenty of religious people there and there are religious elements. However, I have never felt proselytized to there. Clear violations of rules banning commingling of religion and federal aid. Yeah, we have church-state separation for a reason. USDA also asks that pantries limit boxes to 1 per family to ensure that everyone receives help. Hardison said that he handed out up to 30 boxes per recipient because he knew they would further distribute the aid among neighbors and friends. So at my food pantry, we will give out multiple boxes to single people, but they have to show proof that they have specific people they are going to distribute it to. So he could have done these neighborhood distributions and distributions amongst people who weren't able to make them if he just did it right, but he didn't. And also the stuff that my food pantry does is not unique. The ticketed sermon system highlights the pitfalls of a disorganized multi-billion-dollar food aid plan now entering its 10th month of operation. While systems have been able to build themselves up and do better and learn over time, it is a new program. So I may be a bit harsh in this subject because it's upsetting and frustrating. However, it is important also to be kind to the people running food pantries and food banks and these distributions because it is hard work and it is a crash course and a learning curve. Rather than expand food stamps or use existing federal food aid channels to get food to people in need during the pandemic, the Trump administration last May conjured a brand new program out of thin air. I'm going to make a completely other video on these food boxes and this whole program that we've been working with because there is a lot to talk about here. It's just that it goes back and forth. So a big thing also when working in food banks and stuff is we aren't just here to feed hungry people, we're here to reduce food waste. So with how all the entertainment and restaurant industry is closing down, these food production needed to go somewhere. So I like this program for the food boxes. If it was implemented right, food stamps need to be expanded and other federal food aid channels are perfectly fine, but we also needed to address the food supply chain to restaurants and how that was getting stopped in its tracks and there was going to be so much food waste. However, there was a lot, to say the least, of abuses in the system and really just lining the pockets of contractors that were campaign donors. And really, this system is just so intertwined with politics that it could be immensely uncomfortable for nonprofits who are supposed to be nonpartisan, apolitical, to deal with this stuff because there's just so much political baggage behind everything, along with just the hyperpolarization. In the early days of COVID-19, the Farmers to Families food box didn't seem like such a bad idea. USDA hired distributors to purchase produce, meat, and milk, assemble the food into boxes, then deliver them to pantries as part of a truck-to-trunk operation that simultaneously supported farmers who had suddenly lost business and families that had suddenly lost income. Maybe I should read ahead before commentary, but basically, yeah, this program was a good way of reducing food waste while feeding the hungry. However, there are other abuses in it that we have to consider. That, again, I'll do in another episode because there's a lot on that. I meant for this to be a short episode, so I'm sorry with however long it gets. Some organizations went to heroic lengths to get food to people who needed it, often at their own expense. This article focuses on one bad distribution site. I would argue the vast majority of people are doing this good and right and helping people actually get fed and doing it in the right way. Others, like Hardison's operation, have handed out aid in a slapdash fashion, often without verifying recipients' needs and even going as far to use the program to spread religious beliefs. Almost 1 year later, it's not clear the agency's efforts to strengthen program oversight have done much to discourage bad actors. So yeah, Congress has tried to kind of strengthen it and strengthen the oversight and making sure these abuses don't happen. However, they still do happen. And so for handed out aid in a slapdash fashion, yeah, so kind of just throwing stuff out there without verifying needs is not bad. It's not horrible. It's not the greatest, especially if there are people that could use the food. However, a lot of this was let's get food to people who may need it, who definitely need it. Because the thing is, this also goes into my personal philosophy. I see food banks as something to save you from being destitute, not to use only once you are destitute. So especially in this pandemic, these restrictions on verifying recipient need have definitely been loosened. So you can go out and get it without income verification because that's just a whole nother step. We know there are plenty of hungry people out there and plenty of people who need aid in some way. So while we want to get the most food out to those who need it most, it could be better just to give out a bit too much, even without verifying that everyone needs it, rather than denying food to someone who does actually need it, even if they don't fit the specific box that is recipient need. Hardison's proselytizing in flagrant disregard for box per family limits intended to make sure everyone gets food. Echo reporting we published in September. This website also did some articles on other religious abuses of this program that I'll review later, maybe. I'll read a bit more. I just wanted to get the more news, today's news out with this. And how these programs are still having these abuses. And while Hardison brags of multiple truckloads he received, Facebook groups dedicated to the program are still flooded with requests from people who are hoping to find boxes near home. The need for emergency food aid has not abated, but the multi-billion-dollar food box program, now in its fifth round, continues to deliver help unevenly. Yeah, so a huge issue with this program is that it is kind of the only program we have for specific pandemic-related food aid, and they don't really expand other food aid programs sufficiently to take care of this. Also, yeah, the whole difficulty of finding food boxes in the right place, there is a really uneven distribution of these. With each round, when new contracts come up, certain counties have to bid against each other, rather than oh, hey, this is where the most need is, or we should do it proportionally. It goes to the highest bidder, which is, again, just damaging and wastes money rather than trying to get the best quantity of food. That the program's still going. It's been extended through April right now. It was extended on January 19th by the Trump administration. So these contractors got in their profits the last day they could. And so we won't have really much chance for really good reform for another month. And it's just frustrating. Again, Like, this is what I deal with. This is what I think about a lot. And seeing these abuses is just upsetting when so many of us are making such huge efforts and sacrifices to get this food distributed. And then someone goes out and just does something the wrong way. The families that need these boxes are already struggling and having a really difficult time, states the Oklahoma volunteer. There's more quotes from her earlier in the article. Said, "When you put a bunch of hoops and hurdles for people to go through, we miss the people that really need the help, and that's unfortunate." Exactly. Like, no matter what, people are going to be hungry. We just need to get the food to people that are hungry. Like, there's nothing else to really say about it. Food aid shouldn't be difficult to get through to. Food aid should be evenly distributed, like proportionally to what areas desperately need it. What areas are still hit extremely hard by the pandemic, so people aren't able to go back to work yet. However, we have this system that is based on like who can bid the highest for the contract to get their food boxes, and then also like within these counties, like somehow these small sites that are religiously affiliated are getting so much more of the food than they could reasonably responsibly distribute, and like we're getting these religious abuses. Like, I wanted to focus on this story because it really highlights how food aid distributions can be abused, and we need a better program for the sake of public health, along with how this system this guy devised is a religious abuse, which is just harmful because not everyone is Christian. Not everyone is the same brand of Christianity, same denomination. Why did I forget that word for a moment? Anyway, not everyone has the same beliefs, even within a single religion. So forcing people to come to a specific single guy's sermon, by the way, he did not disclose what specific organization he was a part of at any point in this. It was just more of one guy gives a sermon, but by the way, he also has all these pallets of food boxes. All of this is a huge issue because it is showing the abuses that are occurring in the system, while also showing how inaccessible this system can be made for people who desperately need food aid. Like, people are hungry. Just let them eat. Sure, it may have been a 15-minute sermon, only 15 minutes. It may have been something that people were easily able to leave before the sermon started. However, that is all, that doesn't really matter, because the fact is there needs to be a clear separation between food distribution and religion. Many religions are a part of charities and like nonprofits that help the hungry, that help the homeless, that help anyone in need, but we need to ensure that if something is getting federal funding, it is not proselytizing as part of a condition for someone to receive aid from them. That's it, I guess. If you want more information, the link to the article is in the description below. I don't want to read out the whole thing because this video would end up being an hour or so if I did. And yeah, please like, subscribe. Please share this episode out if you like my message. And comment below if you'd like to see more news commentary like these videos, if you would, and if there is anything else you'd like me to address in regards to public health or society in general. Like, just suggest a random topic and I will find how it relates to public health. That's all I have for you today. So stay safe, wear a mask. I'll see you later. So I really did tell myself I wasn't going to do religious-based coverage for a while, but I guess here we are.